on the other side, I would like to invite our next keynote speaker, Kazumi Tomoyama-san, and she's from Okinawa, and we met her also about 2 years ago, and she will bring us very, very important and different thoughts from Okinawa perspective. So, Tomoyama-sensei, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tomoyama Kazumi from Okinawa. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone at Bridge Salon. I am delighted to have this opportunity to reflect on current issues and the future together with my friends in East Asia. I work as an archivist at the Okinawa Prefectural Archives, and I've been interested in impact of history on artistic expression and have been exploring what Okinawan artists have expressed under the oppression of occupation and colonialism. My small practice led to exchanges with Uda Kang from Taiwan and Kim Jung-gi from South Korea to share this opportunity. So I would like to confess something about today's topic. I was told that the concept of the island hopping project is to fight back against imperialism and form a regional art alliance based on the actions of artists. I strongly agree with this concept, as it is exactly what is needed for artists in East Asia. However, in the Okinawan Art Society, it is very difficult to create the basis for such an alliance. Today, I'd like to talk first about this difficulty. Before I go any further, let me explain the situation in Okinawa in the new Cold War scheme. President Biden has made clear his opposition to China, and it was sensationally reported that senior U.S. military officials said that China could invade Taiwan within 6 years. This has led to a lot of talk in Japan about possible conflict in the Taiwan Strait, although I believe that direct engagement between the U.S. and China is unrealistic, but the Taiwan Strait crisis is just being conveniently used by those who want to remilitarize Japan. So Okinawa, located on the first island chain and in close proximity to Taiwan, is the most affected by this. The distance between the island of Okinawa and Taiwan is 580 kilometers, and while the closest island, Yonaguni, is only 110 kilometers away. Under the Japan-U.S. security treaty regime, both the government wants to use the vast U.S. military bases on Okinawa Island and the Japanese self-defense forces bases on other islands as a deterrent against China. However, many Okinawans do not want to be victims of U.S.-Japan security any longer. The presence of a strong military base in Okinawa means that it can be a target for attack. Okinawa is a society that has never forgotten the tragedy of 1945, when at least 120,000 islanders died in the fierce fighting between the U.S. and Japanese forces during the final phase of World War II, and continues to insist on peace and sanctity of life under the proposition that the military does not protect the population. The Okinawan people's campaign for the removal of military bases and the anti-war peace movement has been going on for more than 70 years since the American occupation. So the militarization of Okinawa since World War II has been carried out without regard to the will of the Okinawan. During the Cold War, the U.S. positioned the bases on Okinawa as an anti-communist stronghold, a keystone in the Pacific, and continued its cold-hearted military occupation. Neither the U.S. nor Japan has to respect democracy in Okinawa, so they were free to expand their bases. In the late 1960s, the U.S., exhausted by the Vietnamese War, decided to return Okinawa to Japan and force the Japanese government to bear the cost of maintaining the bases. And the hope of Okinawa is to be a peaceful island without military bases, but the reality of politics does not allow it. A half-century after the reversion, Okinawa has been increasingly reinforced as a U.S. military fortress. This is a view of Tenma Air Base, painted by Okinawan artist Ishigaki Katsuko. This station was built in 1945, literally one fence away from the dense residential area. The envoy osprey rests on its wings like a sinister bird. Many people may know the construction of a huge military complex at Henoko and Oura Bay under the guise of relocating the Tenma. It is expected that this construction work will be increasingly promoted in the name of the U.S.-China conflict and the crisis in the Taiwan Strait. And this is another Ishigaki's work, the site where the alternative to the Tenma airfield is being built. The construction will reclaim 160 hectares of the sea, and it's a horrible environmental disaster. It is truly sad to see the soil and sand being dumped into our beautiful sea day after day. The government has announced that it will take 12 years to complete the project, and it feels like it is slowly killing not only our beautiful sea, but also our spirits. This year, the Japanese government made an even more shocking announcement that they would mine a massive 31,000 cubic meters of earth from a wilderness area in the south of the Okinawan island to provide the soil and sand for the reclamation. This is the area where a large number of the residents died in 1945 and where the remains of the war dead are still dug up. They are going to throw the soil soaked in the blood and bones of those who died in the war into the sea to build a new base, which 70% of Okinawans strongly oppose. This inhumane idea has angered the people of Okinawa very much. And already mountains have been cut down to the point of losing their shape in order to obtain sand and soil. And now they want to gauge out the wilderness. The Okinawan local government estimates the cost of the new Henoko base at $18.2 billion US. The huge cost is, of course, linked to the interest of capital. Okinawa is now witnessing the proposition that capital derives the greatest profit from war or the threat of war. Just when we thought the world was going to be more supportive of each other in the face of COVID-19 pandemic, but we see the opposite. In the 25 years since the plan to build a new base at Henoko emerged, people's opposition that has tenacious. I am proud of the nonviolent resistance that people are putting up against such a huge opponent in order to achieve the world they want. What I regret, however, is that there are so few Okinawan artists to accompany this struggle. Exceptionally, there are charismatic figures in the generation above me, such as the excellent photographers, the sculptor Kinjo Minoru and the printmaker Gima Hiroshi. Individual artists have excelled in the face of oppression, but they seem to have been buried in their own personal unusual and never to have entered the public sphere. I cannot find any clear examples of artists showing long-term solidarity and action against imperialism and colonialism. Why is there no collaboration between artists and social movements in Okinawa, while artists have shown great strength in solidarity in the democracy movement in East Asian countries? In particular, the tendency of artists born after 1972, the year of the revision, is to be very nervous about their expression being perceived as political. They don't go out into the public sphere. They stay in the private sphere and concentrate on private things. Of course, that kind of art is also important to explore the inner life of the individual, or to experiment with technique, color, and form is also to open up the possibilities of artistic expression. But if all artists remain in the private sphere, it will be impossible to develop the potential of art in solidarity with society. Relatively young generation of artists has shown an attitude to be politically transparency. Perhaps this is an inevitable consequence of the state of Japanese society. After the student movement of the 1960s, which ended in radicalization and gloom for some, Japanese society no longer expect younger generations to have the energy for social change. In a society of continued economic growth and complacency, being apolitical is seen as a virtue. There is little experience of confronting and thinking deeply about contemporary Japanese or East Asian history in school education, and a vague sense of history means that they cannot form independent opinions about the nation state or the ruling system. It is also worth pointing out that self-censorship among the artists is widespread. Many of you may remember the incident at Aichi in 2018 when an outrageous protest against an exhibition was forced to be cancelled. The object of the protest was a statue of a young girl reminiscent of Korean comfort woman, and a video showing the burning of a portrait of the Japanese emperor. It was a stark reminder that freedom of expression is at stake. This situation did not come out of nowhere. Since the 1990s, historical revisionism and hate against Asia, especially South and North Korea and China, have been widespread in Japanese society. The attack is also directed at Okinawan peace movement, calling for reduction of U.S. military bases. They say that this peace movement is anti-Japan. This showed that Imperial Japan's disdain for Asia, its former colonialism, has not yet disappeared in modern Japan. So, there is also a soft Japanese fascism that is spreading in Okinawa. It has led people to the spontaneous servitude. The fear of being seen as political or critical of the system has made artists reluctant to think and express themselves. In Japan, a law has recently been passed to allow surveillance of residents living near bases. Depending on how this law is implemented, it may be impossible even to depict the landscape with U.S. bases. The soft fascism may already have mutated into hard fascism, a blatant suppression of freedom of speech and expression. Okay, after all this gloomy talk, let's talk about a little hope. In January this year, a group exhibition of 22 artists was held. in a cafe gallery in Okinawa. The title of the exhibition was Imagine as the Voice of Nature. And the concept of the exhibition was to question the development plans of the city authorities for coastal reclamation. This is a bird's eye view of the beach and its surroundings. The coast of Irijima, not far from the cafe gallery, and is a world of biodiversity with tidal flats, coral reefs, seaweed and seagrass beds that are miraculously precious for an urban area. It is a place of peace and tranquility where people can enjoy resting by the sea and tide pooling and observing small life. Is it really necessary to destroy the sea and develop what is it that we really must not lose? This exhibition provided a platform of art as a place to imagine the answer to the questions. The organizer of the exhibition is a photographer and the cafe gallery owner, Taira Jun. And this is a photo of beach taken in 1963, and it was lost when the first landfill in 1968 under the name of the development. And so I don't have enough time to explain each of the works. Let me share the images. So now you can see how much we love the sea. And yes, we cannot live without the sea. The total area to be reclaimed by the development plan is 109 hectares. Another 8.5 hectares have already been reclaimed. And the landscape has been transformed by the construction of a coastal road and a huge shopping mall. The reclaimed area will be further expanded to build a civil port where large cruise ships can dock, and artificial beaches, hotels, commercial and convention facilities, and the relocation of the U.S. military port. I also don't see how destroying our rich natural environment and inviting a military port into our peaceful water is the only way for the city to grow. So there is another question about the reclamation. In the hinterland of this beach is Camp Kinza, which serves as the major Marine Corps logistics base within the Asia-Pacific region since 1945. With an area of 274 hectares, it is the largest logistics base in the Far East. The Japanese and U.S. government have decided to return Camp Kinza to the landowners after 2025. If this much land is to be returned, why is it necessary to reclaim the sea to create land? So this development plan and the relocation of the U.S. military port became an issue in the mayoral election. So this exhibition was deliberately held during the election campaign. It was a way for the artists to collectively address a very political issue on the side of that politics. This is quite challenging in terms of what I have been saying about the way the artist acts in Okinawa. So the concentration of U.S. military bases has changed Okinawa so much, but it's, let's be honest, our own desire for profit and comfort profit and convenience has also allowed the destruction of nature in the name of development. Particularly, the changes in the last 30 years, the rapid expansion of the tourism industry is changing the vernacular culture and way of life. When the old Cold War ended, what should have been a victory for freedom and democracy was replaced by a victory for capitalism. Since socialism was seen as a failure, purist capitalism has grown fat on globalization and neoliberalism, destroying ecosystems, widening the gap between the rich and poor, and stripping the social safety net from the weak and throwing them naked into the street. Okinawa was also part of this tide. But is this the world we wanted to live in? A new generation like Greta Thunberg is condemning the old capitalist way of life. The pandemic of COVID-19 may have come to tell us that it is time to rethink civilization rather than our lifestyle. And the participant artists of Imagine exhibition have raised their voices to change the world from the shores of their neighborhood. Taira, the organizer, has been working with community leaders in the proposed development area to encourage the city authorities to give more public input into the development plans. And Taira told that many local residents visited the show and shared their views on the works, and that it was a moving experience for him to see art connect with the community and the politics. Moreover, 2 mayoral candidates also visited the exhibition. Taira realized that even such a small exhibition had a power that politicians could not ignore. Although the pro-development candidate won the mayoral election, it is not yet impossible to change the plan into a more humane one. Taira said that he would like to continue to promote artist activities and to work with community. The artists have tried to offer an imagination that poses to think about economic development with its attendant destruction of nature and to search for a sustainable society. I think that even if the participating artists do not verbalize it, their work has the potential to be a fight back against capitalism and imperialism. Therein lies the opportunity for Okinawan artists to participate in Art Alliance, which is the aim of the island hopping project. So when it comes to fighting back against imperialism, artists are not politicians. Artists reach out to people in a different way politicians do, creating an imagination for a more free world. I believe that art may not be able to change the world, but it can bring a new mindset of individuals. And at the moment, East Asian artists may be feeling overwhelmed by the bitter reality of the situation, but this is when we need to get out of our cave and work for solidarity. And it is of core importance, especially for the Okinawan artists. We have one thing in common. We are islanders. Islands are always on the periphery of empires. They inherently have a perspective that relativize the apparatus of the state. Now is the time for art to present an imagination of island ideas, maybe island philosophy that is different from the ones of nation-state capital. I will continue to search for what I can do in order for my islands to be part of this future federation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for Kazumi-san's very impressive presentations and led us to need to think a lot of issues and questions. Yeah, I think for today's conversation, maybe we couldn't have all the answer, but I'm really looking for later on other panel speaker when we have panel discussions, and we can sharing our idea and maybe find some similarities, and we can communicate more and to using the as an island nation or island hopping way to rethink the continental issues.